I don't think there's a single pre-med out there who hasn't asked the question, how many hours should I have of extracurricular to successfully be a competitive applicant and apply to medical school? So I'm not faulting you for ever thinking that question. I thought that question in the past, but the hard truth is that that is completely the wrong question to be asking. We'll get more into it, but this video is going to be all about how to map out your extracurriculars and have meaningful ones. And if it's something meaningful that you enjoy doing, you're not going to be like, how many hours of this should I have until I can stop? First, if you're new here, my name is Maggie. I'm a fourth year medical student, and the second time I applied, got into 10 medical schools despite a 3.3 GPA. But there was a lot of like ups and downs and hiccups and not knowing what I was doing the first time to get to that point. So it's Life by Maggie. This YouTube and everything is about sharing everything I learned the hard way so you don't have to. I also recently joined the admissions committee for my team, so I help screen applicants. So I have an extra insight into this. But before that, honestly, I was teaching all the same advice because I have a whole program, Road to Acceptance, and I have taught hundreds of students in there and have helped a lot of other people be successful and get multiple acceptances as well with the advice that I have shared from my journey in the first place. A lot of just advice from firsthand teaching others and extra insight from being on the admissions committee. So I want to just sit down and tell you everything about extracurriculars. All right, so I started saying the wrong question is how many hours should I get of extracurricular? The way that I view it is there's buckets of extracurriculars that you want to fill up, and you want to do that in the most meaningful and enjoyable way possible. So it's not about hours, it's about filling up those buckets, and some buckets can be bursting at the seams, and some buckets could maybe be a little lower, but it's not checking the box because you're still gonna find the closest way possible to enjoy it. I'll tell you more examples as we go through it, but that's what I think is the right way to think about extracurriculars versus just how many hours do we need. But like I said, I thought that too, and it's a totally normal question to ask. I'm just not going to be giving you hours in this video, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm also very realistic in that you're not going to enjoy everything you have to do that is like required of you as a pre-med. Like that's just fact. Okay, and I have an example later on, so I'll share what I did to still like not just check the box, kind of enjoy it, but at the end of the day, it's not like I got a ton of it, right? First thing is overview of the buckets of extracurriculars. So, and I'm gonna kind of go, I don't know if priority is the right word, they're all important, but I just wanna emphasize that hands-on clinical experience should be your number one priority, please, 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 please. Especially if you're a freshman watching this or just early in your pre-med journey and you have so much time, just know now if you weren't planning to make it a top priority, make it a top priority. There's shadowing, gotta get that. It's hard to find, but you can do it, I promise. But it's passive. So it's like something you have to do, but getting tons of it or more of it isn't gonna serve you. If you have 40 to 80 hours of shadowing, then you're good to go and you need to move on. And instead of trying to find more shadowing, like if you just want to explore your interests and you're like, I haven't shadowed at this type of facility, or I haven't shadowed this specialty and I want to, should I? If you want to, yes, just explore your curiosities, go for it. But as far as like, I need to shadow more to be more competitive, no, like that's not correct. But also like, oh, she said 48 to 80 and move on, so I shouldn't do any more. No, if you're curious and you want to, go for it. I'm just, yeah, hopefully I explained that well. So shadowing, gotta get it, 40 to 80. Like if you have more, great. But next is clinical experience. Does not have to be paid. The really like, I guess, kill two birds with one stone way to do this is to find clinical volunteering. It's not like super easy, but if you go this route, then you don't have to pay $1,200, which isn't a bad way to spend your money. This is important stuff, getting into medical school. But if you can avoid spending $1,200 and have meaningful hands-on clinical experience, it's like a friggin' double whammy, okay? I wasn't able to find it, although I don't know that I really knew how to search until I had my EMT. Anyway, so this could be like in Colorado, there's the Dawn Clinic, and I know a pre-med who was able to volunteer there and get really great hands-on experience because it's a free clinic, student run, and probably doing blood pressures. I don't know if she gets to help with phlebotomy like the med students do, but that's fantastic. Or another example would be there's this rodeo every year that happens, and I know the med students at least can volunteer and give blood pressure screenings and stuff at this one booth. So look at events in your area, look at free clinics in your area, just try to like just do your research and see if you can find clinical volunteering. Obviously, if you're at a if you have a pre-med club, you could look into things that are there, check your emails that you're getting, see if you can find something. But if you've kind of exhausted all of those research efforts and you can't find that, then the next step is to apply to jobs without a certification and see if you can get one where they're training you on the job. That is totally possible. In DC, my friend was able to get an MA job and had no certification, whereas I was in Seattle. I applied to like 30 and I consider myself pretty good at landing jobs, and I could not get any. They wanted a certification. So try. And again, then if attempt 2 doesn't work, then get a certification, pay the money, ask for money for Christmas, figure out a way to get the certification, get it, and then finding clinical experience is nothing. Like, you just need the certification and you will get a job. So you make the money back the second you start the job. So do not worry about the money, just do it and you'll get it back. What should you do for clinical experience? That's like, medical assistant is fantastic. Scribe is great. You're not like, maybe less direct patient one-on-one patient care, but you're like, I think you're really in the thick of it as a scribe. You're like witnessing everything. You're side by side with the doctor. You're writing the notes, which is a big responsibility. I think it's great. If it were me, I would go for MA or EMT. Those would be the top 2. Or phlebotomist. I think that's what I personally would go for. But scribe is great, like truly great. Don't like think it's less great. It is. That's just not what I go for. Unless it was also a scribe role where you could do blood pressure and like more intake and like talking to the patients yourself, because some kind of have like emerged roles. Anyway, and then CNA, patient care tech, anything that involves direct patient care, not stocking shelves or like ideally not handing them ice packs or giving them blankets. Like, yes, okay, technically that's direct patient care, but if you're watching this and you're early in your pre-med journey, like don't shoot for that. Like shoot for something more like, you know, volunteer EMT, maybe you can do CPR, like try to really have more responsibility, I guess, than like blankets and things like that. So that's clinical experience. That's the first bucket, is like you're really showing med schools your commitment to medicine by getting hands-on clinical experience, doing the shadowing. Honestly, shadowing is checking the box, but like still explore your curiosities and try to look for like specialties you're interested in. The next buckets are research, and I have it written out here. So research, community service, I call it like not being a pre-med robot, and then leadership. So for the rest of the buckets, if you can like, again, have each of these buckets bursting at the seams, that's fantastic. But for example, next one, research. I am not a fan of research. I just really am not. I had no interest in trying to do tons of research and get publications and write the manuscripts. And I wasn't interested in doing the poster presentations. I didn't want to do any of that. Okay, but I knew that it would help me. I was already trying to overcome a lower GPA. So what I did to find research was just ask one of my favorite professors. Like, she was so cool. I thought she was awesome, and I loved being in her class. And I heard her talking about research, and I just walked up to her and I was like, hey, can I do research with you? And then it's just a thing at like my undergrad where it's a class, but like a 1-hour credit class. And then I got to go in X amount of times per week or per month or whatever and do these like experiments and stuff. And was it the most exciting thing I ever did? Not necessarily, but I got to do it with people I enjoyed being around. Especially, she like let us have like create our own experiments, and it became fun for what it was for me, if that makes sense. Alternatively, let's say community service is just like, you're really passionate about research, you want those publications, you love it, it's exciting, and you're the opposite of me. Maybe you don't have as much community service, and that's okay. Maybe you love both and you have a ton of both. Okay, I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of different ways to fill up the buckets. It doesn't have to be the same for everybody. The key is, what do you enjoy, and make sure you kind of go above and beyond in that bucket. And then for the other ones, find a way to enjoy it if it's not your favorite. So that's how I did it for research. For community service, this does not have to be clinical. And like, if it is, like, if you do have clinical community service, I would still try to find other volunteering that's not clinical, so that your volunteering isn't only medicine, if that makes sense. And think long-term. Okay, ask yourself first, like, what do I love? Do I love soccer? Do I love sewing? Or do I love horses? Okay, whatever you love, then be like, how can I find volunteering in that area? So for soccer, you could teach kids from an underserved elementary. You could be a volunteer soccer coach for 5th graders. How awesome would that be? You could sew for hospice patients. That's kind of clinical, but not really, because you're selling. So you could like sew, I don't know, cute blankets and stuff or quilts for people in hospice, and that'd be so cool. For horses, you could volunteer at one of those riding camps where children with disabilities get to go, and you could be a volunteer. So my point is, don't check the box with volunteering. And as somebody who screens applications, if you're like, I volunteered for 200 hours and I stocked shelves and I did this, versus like, I've loved quilting since I was a kid. My mom and I did it together. it's something that brought us together. And now my absolute passion is like making quilts for these blah blah, and I've been able to touch this person's life by this. Like that is so much more, like that is how you stand out, promise. Okay. And then the no robot category, that's like very similar. So with the volunteering, that's like 3 ideas of how you could incorporate like who are you besides a pre-med robot, and like who are you human, like what do you enjoy? Because sometimes students are like, well, I don't have a dancing hobby, I'm not in sports, I'm not in a sewing club. That's okay. Like just find it through volunteering. You can show that you're like who you are kind of like as a human, as a person, like a little bit more about like just you through how you find volunteering. I hope I'm explaining that well. But for me, like another example, if you do like sports or something, I was on my equestrian team for 4 years and I absolutely love that. You don't have to tell me to get a minimum number of hours for that. I went to college undecided and had no plans to be a pre-med. Like I went to college for that equestrian team. So like that was my like, yeah, I have interests outside of medicine for sure, and science and all the things. And then the next category related to this is leadership. Again, you don't have to be in like the SMAC's chemistry club and then try to be president and like try to scheme your way into like an official title or something by like starting your clubs. I got my leadership by being the captain of my equestrian team my senior year. Like that was so like just natural and organic, and it wasn't something I planned or was like, how am I gonna get leadership? It's like I was just doing this thing I enjoyed, and it naturally happened that I was like captain my senior year because I was on it all 4 years. Similarly, if you're a TA, that's leadership. If you're a tutor, that's leadership. You don't have to technically mark it as leadership to be leadership on your application. The second I became pre-med, leadership was not on my mind. It just happened naturally. So maybe just like take all the other advice and it will probably happen naturally. If you become a scribe, you could become chief scribe. If you are that person opposite of me, super passionate about research, you might then teach future research trainees. So honestly, like let the opportunities come to you. Honestly, that's my advice. That's what I did. And I think I had good leadership and in other ways, but that was the big one. Okay, so we covered all of the buckets and that is my advice. Hopefully I was able to convey kind of the emphases and things that I wanted to convey. This is how I went about it the second time I applied, and I was drastically more successful. My last 2, well, I was gonna make 2 more points after this, but I think I already covered the first one, which is quality over quantity. So if you're that person that has a 520 MCAT, a 4.0 GPA, and you have 3 research publications, and you're like, how am I gonna fit in volunteering too? Are you kidding me? Don't think quantity in that case. Don't think like, how can I get X amount of hours? Be like, how can I do something that I am passionate about once a month for a couple hours for the next 3 years that I'm truly passionate about, and I have meaningful stories and reflections to share about it from those 3 years, because like I've just done that one thing longitudinally and I was able to have so much good in-depth experience. So I don't know. Anyway, that's my extra tidbit for quality over quantity. Like I know if you're making some of these buckets burst at the seams, that doesn't lead, you can't do it all. You can't make all of the buckets. Well, some people do, but you don't have to get into medical school. So think about it that way. You could just have one thing that's over a long term, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, that you're truly passionate about, and that is just as good as somebody who has like 5 different amazing, went to a third world country and did this and did that. Yeah, okay. Next soapbox is my top tip is to journal along the way. I have 21 journal prompts that I will put linked around under this video or something, and you will just thank yourself so incredibly much when it comes time to writing all of those essays. And again, a different video that I've talked about more in depth, but you want to use stories to help you stand out. It's gonna be real hard to sit down with a blank piece of paper and be like, okay, what story can I use from this extracurricular I did 3 years ago, or even 6 months ago when you go to sit down and write it. So just check out those journaling prompts and they'll help you so much. And that's my last tip for extracurriculars. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments what topic I mentioned in this video that you want me to like kind of go deeper into. Cool. See you in the next one.